You know, the world is on fire and it sucks, and I want to be happy and escape. Hey guys, what's up? It's Ashley. Welcome back to my channel, and I'm here with my April reading wrap up. I'm really excited to talk about my April reads because I pretty much fell back in love with romance again. Long story short, I've mentioned in several videos here and there that like new releases, dark romances, all of that, it's not hitting for me the way that it used to. And when I had got back into reading years and years ago, it was historical romances that got me back into reading. So I decided, just because, you know, the world is on fire and it sucks and I want to be happy and escape, I decided to like rewatch Richardson last month and just read a ton of historical romances. And I really did fall in love with romances again. The yearning and the pining in historical romances is just so... it's something very different that you don't get in a contemporary romance. I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, so we are going to go over my April reads. I read 16 books for the month. Not all of them were historical romances, but majority of them were. So without further ado, here are those reads. Now, I did technically start April off with a contemporary romance, and that was Off to the Races by Elsie Silver. In my last wrap up, I mentioned that I read the first 3 books in the Rose Hill series, and I really did enjoy them, so I decided to go back into the Elsie verse and start from the beginning, and I did enjoy this. So I listened to the audiobook. It is free on Spotify, so I used like my monthly pick or whatever for that. But this is going to be an enemies to lovers type of story. We have Vaughn and Billy as our main characters. But Vaughn is a businessman, and he is trying to rebuild his family's ranch and reputation because his grandfather had quite the scandal, and he basically tarnished everything that the family had built. And Vaughn is trying his hardest to just build it back up and even restore his grandfather's name in the process. So at the beginning of the story, he is looking for a new horse trainer because this is not like your typical type of ranch. It's a ranch that has race horses. So like I said, at the beginning of the book, he is looking for a new trainer, and he and Billy do not get off to the best start because he sees her name on her application and assumes that she's a guy. So he's just really sexist towards her. When he meets her, he's like, you don't know anything about horses. You don't know anything about races. Like, prove me wrong. And she does, and they don't get off to the best start. And so there is just some great banter throughout this book. Billy really comes to fall for the horse that she is training. Just a really great start to Elsie's books. But yeah, like I said, the audiobook is free on Spotify if you do have premium. But yeah, I think I rated this 3.5, but it was very quick, it was enjoyable, and great to, you know, kick off the spring summer season. All right, and then to kick off the historical romance journey, I started with the first 3 books in the House of Rohan series. Very interesting. So the first book was Ruthless by Stuart. This is going to follow Eleanor and the Viscount Lord Rohan. And so Eleanor is described as not being traditionally beautiful. She's a very tall woman, and she just knows that she's probably never going to get married. She is not in the best financial circumstances. It's her and her sister and her mother basically has some really serious mental issues going on. And so at the beginning of the story, her mother has escaped their house and has found her way into a brothel to gamble and things like that. And so Eleanor basically has to sneak away and retrieve her mother. Well, there is Rohan. He runs this brothel. It's more like a sex club where a lot of things are going on. Like I said, there's gambling, there's sex orgies, there's just a lot going on here. And so Eleanor basically just wants to get in, she wants to get her mother out and then leave. Well, she meets Rohan, and she just thinks because she's not an attractive woman, he's just gonna let her go. Well, he, however, finds her to be very intriguing, and he becomes obsessed with her, and he wants to know her, and he basically wants to bed her. Or he basically just becomes this game of cat and mouse of him wanting to bed her really badly and her being like, just leave me alone. But I really did enjoy that one. And the second book in this series is Reckless. It's going to follow Eleanor and Rohan's son, Adrian, and Charlotte. And this story, once again, Charlotte is described as not being traditionally beautiful, and Adrian, like his father before him, is a notorious rake. And so he has kind of taken over for his father with this brothel sex club. And Charlotte is older. I believe she's in her late 20s, and she wants to experience sexual things. If I remember correctly, she's pretty much realized she's going to be a spinster and given up on dreams of marriage, but she wants to experience things. And so she approaches Adrian at this brothel and asks him to teach her in the ways of the sexual acts, whatever. Basically gets Adrian to teach her about sex and stuff like that. So they basically end up holding themselves up in this brothel for like an entire weekend, and obviously Adrian is gonna want more from her after that. But I really liked it. And then the third book in this series is Breathless, and I really enjoyed this one. So this one is gonna follow Miranda. She is the daughter of Adrian and Charlotte, and prior to the story starting, she had been ruined, as you will. She had been assaulted, and so basically her reputation is tarnished. She is no longer able to be on the marriage market, and so she basically kind of takes this as a sense of freedom, because obviously her family is very wealthy, so she's basically able to have her own house, things like that, and this is just her life. But she feels very alone because she's not allowed to be out in society or anything like that. And then we have our male main character, Lucian. Lucian is known as the Scorpion. He's basically described as this devil-like character, and he is seeking revenge on the Rohan family. And so he thinks that if he is able to take Miranda as his wife, he's going to be able to reenact his revenge on the family. And so he has to trick Miranda into his home. It's a forced marriage. So this one is a lot darker than the other two. I will say the first two did have a darker tone in terms of historical romances, but this one definitely was the darkest. But the tension, the banter, it was great. Miranda fought back, and I really loved that. But yeah, that was the House of Rohan series. I definitely want to continue it. The fourth book is supposed to be about her brother, so it won't be the next generation, but I will go back to that series because it was very enjoyable. Then I read Simply Love by Mary Balogh, and oh my gosh, I loved this book so much. So this is going to be one of those stories where both of our main characters have very tragic pasts, and they're scarred, and they both feel like there's nothing more for them in this life. It's going to follow Anne and Sydenham. And when Anne was 19 years old, she was sexually assaulted, and it resulted in a pregnancy. And the man that attacked her did not want to take responsibility, did not want to marry her, and so she was basically cast off from society by her family and everything like that. She had her son, and then she ended up becoming a teacher at an all-girls boarding school. Her son lives there with her, and she teaches, and that is just her current life. And then you have Sydenham, and he was a war hero, and while he was in the war, he was actually kidnapped and tortured, and in the process, he lost an eye and his arm. He is working as a caretaker at like this seaside castle for some good friends of his and stuff like that. So he's very well liked by the people around him, but he doesn't go out and try to marry anyone or anything like that because people are afraid of his appearance. So Anne and her son, along with a few other people, end up getting invited by some friends out to this seaside manor for the summer holiday. And so there she meets Sydenham. And because they are both just very lonely people, they strike up a friendship. They take walks along the beach together. They really get to know each other. And I really like this story. Like I said, she was a single mother. And so he was trying to get to know her son and stuff like that. But, you know, this was different times. And so a single mom back then where she was never married in the process, big no-no. And so I don't know. I really liked this story. Just the fact that both of them felt like they weren't good enough for each other. Also because Anne's only sexual experience in life was being assaulted. When she finally gets with Sydenham, it's not all that sunshine and rainbows. She is trying to figure out how to enjoy sex and be pleasured and stuff like that without having the PTSD and being haunted from it. So there was just a lot to this story, and I really, really did enjoy it. I binged the Wallflowers series by Lisa Kleypas. I was specifically looking for a series where I could feel a Bridgerton type of vibe, just with, you know, you are sticking with the same characters, everybody gets their own love story, stuff like that, and this absolutely delivered. So if you are looking for something Bridgerton-esque and you've never read The Wallflowers, go read them. Lisa Kleypas also has spin-off series where they connect to this series as well, but I really liked it. There's only 4 books. There's like a prequel novella also. I haven't read that, and then a Christmas one. I haven't read that. I have this weird thing. I will not read holiday books if it's not the holiday season. So maybe I'll read it at Christmas time. Who knows? Instead of a family like Bridgerton, this book is going to follow 4 women who basically have dubbed themselves the Wallflowers. They are in their early to mid 20s, and they've been around each other together for, I think, 1 London season at this point, and basically they are literal wallflowers. You know, they sit off to the side, they are not asked to dance or anything like that, and so they kind of become aware of each other and decide to strike up a friendship and help each other acquire husbands so they don't all become spinsters. And so in order to make it fair, they decide, hey, we'll do the oldest first, followed by the youngest. First book is Secrets of a Summer Night, and this one is going to follow Annabelle. And I really loved this story because this is like a frenemies to lovers. It's enemies to lovers, but it's like he makes it very clear how much he really wants her, and she is just like, go away, you annoy the hell out of me. So I really loved the tension and the pining in this book, but my absolute favorite out of this series was the second book, It Happened One Autumn. And I really think, please read the whole series, okay? You're really going to feel the most magic if you read the whole thing as a whole. And this couple's relationship is really set up in the first book because Lord Marcus, is friends with Simon, who is the main character of the first book, and then obviously Lillian is friends with Annabelle. And so Lillian I would describe as a very headstrong, ahead of her time type of female character, and so Marcus does not see her as ladylike at all. He's very put off by her. He tells her she needs some manners and stuff like that, and so they get off to not the greatest start in book 1, and then obviously book 2 will be their story. And I have to say, if you are looking for a story with Kate and Anthony Bridgerton season 2 vibes, this is the couple. All right, this is the motherfucking couple, because they are both headstrong. They both will not back down. There is a few moments in here that kind of remind me of the bee scene. She's also a very experienced horse rider. He doesn't want her getting hurt by doing, there's a lot, okay? And then the third book is Devil in Winter, and this one is going to follow Evie. It was a very, very hard life. Her mother died in childbirth, and her father just thought she would be better to be raised by her mother's family. He owns like a gambling club and stuff, so it was no place to raise a child. Now, her mother's family is horrible to her, absolutely horrible. They abuse her. Evie has a stutter, and so they just keep her under lock and key. And so Evie sneaks out one night, and then she approaches Sebastian, Lord St. Vincent. You will meet him in book 2, and she proposes marriage to him. So this one is going to be a marriage of convenience. Really, really liked it. And then the fourth one is Scandal in Spring, and this is going to cover Lillian's younger sister, Daisy. She has basically been given an ultimatum by their father saying, you need to marry at the end of this season, or you are going to marry my favorite employee. And this is a man that Daisy has never ever liked. It's literally her, like, this is a man her father wishes was his son. She does not want to marry him at all. He's always kind of been intrigued with her. So yeah, there's just, there was a lot of banter and stuff in that one, but overall, I just really, really had a blast reading this series. It was cozy. It was the pining and the yearning. It was great. It was a great found family series. So like I said, if you are looking for something to scratch that Bridgerton itch, this was the series to do that. Okay, now this next book definitely took me on a ride. Now, I have been technically reading this one for a few months, but it was when I got back into this historical romance hyperfixation that I basically just decided, okay, now we are going to stay with this and we are going to finish it. So it is The Silver Devil by Teresa Dennis. And this is a book that was written in the 1970s. And a lot of people describe this as like the original Ripper Bodice dark romance historical book. And oh my goodness. So I will start by saying this book is really, really hard to find. Okay, the author has passed away, and so you can't just find an ebook or anything. It is on Scribd. So if you have a Scribd subscription, you can download the ebook there, and then I just had it sent to my Kindle. But obviously this is going to be a dark historical romance. Now, it is a medieval romance. It is set in the early 1600s in Italy. And this is just, it is definitely, okay. When I say dark, it is dark, okay? You are going to have a lot of non-con in here. A lot of non-con, dub-con, all of that. Okay, so this story is going to follow Felicia. And Felicia lives with her brother and his wife. They are not kind to her at all. She's basically a bastard child. And so she's just never been treated with respect because they have different fathers and things like that. And so one day, while there is like this parade of royalty and she is watching, the Duke happens to see her and become really, really enthralled with her, like at first sight. And so he takes measures into his hands to have her taken from her home and brought to his castle. And so it is there that she wakes up in a strange place and realizes where she is and that she has been brought there to become the Duke's mistress. And so while she is there basically being, you know, used and abused by this guy, she is falling in love with him. And there is all of these politics going around because obviously she is not royalty. He has to marry someone, but he is so obsessed with her. So he is like asking for her input of who should I marry. Basically, though, making it known to her, you know, when I marry someone, you're still mine. Like, they're technically the side piece. But this was just really dark. And when I say he was obsessed with her, the things that he did to other characters for trying to help her escape or trying to get with her themselves, ooh, it was intense. It was good, though. It was really good. So like I said, if you want to read a really dark historical romance, go try this one because it was a wild ride and I really did enjoy it. But, you know, like I said, I read a lot of dark romances, so a lot of the non-con, dub-con, that stuff just doesn't really bother me, but this was just, it was a fascinating read. I will say that. It was very fascinating. And then I picked up Her Baseborn Bridegroom on KU. This was a really interesting medieval romance. It's going to follow Lynette and Mason. And at the beginning of the story, Lynette is set to marry Mason's brother, but his brother doesn't want to marry her. And so Mason, along with their other brother, are traveling to Lynette's castle on the wedding day to basically tell her this is not going to happen. And so then he meets Lynette and he's trying to tell her this, and she is really desperate to get married and things like that for security and stuff like that. So she basically makes him an offer that he can't refuse and says, marry me instead, and then I will have your heir, and then your heir will become the Duke. And he's like, oh, well, that sounds really, really, really enticing. Like, I'll get all this property, my kid will be the Duke. Okay, sure, let's do it. And then your story is going to go from there. But it was just a very fun and interesting medieval romance. It does set up a series with the other brothers, but the brothers just, they are obsessed with these ladies. So I'm excited to read the other two, but this one, Mason, just, you could see his obsession because at the very beginning of the book, he makes it known, like, I am only marrying you for the property and for the fact that my son can have a title. And then you get further in the book and then he'll make these comments like, oh, well, let's actually have 2 kids. No, let's have 3. No, you know what? Let's have a whole brood of kids. So it's just, it was great. It was fun. Just a nice, light, quick romance. Okay, the angle probably looks a little different, but that is because I screwed up and deleted some footage that I was not supposed to delete. So we are sitting here again. But anyway, the next book is Dance with the Devil by Amanda Richardson. And this was so twisted, so unhinged, so good. So this is going to follow Dante and Francesca. And Dante is a doctor and Francesca is his virtual assistant. They live in different cities. They've never met in person, but she has been his assistant for years. Now, they have a conference coming up and Dante needs her there. Like, this is going to be the first time that they ever meet in person. So Frankie, as she is known, is not looking forward to this trip. She actually hates her boss with a passion. She refers to him as Dr. Devil just because he is constantly ruining all of her free and spare time. Like, whenever she's not working, he is just texting her, ruining dates, everything like that. And so she is just not looking forward to this weekend getaway. Now, unbeknownst to her, Dante has been obsessed with her since he hired her. Basically, when he got his resume, he looked her up and full-blown obsession. So he's clearly been like messing with her for all these years. And so he's finally going to have her in a hotel room with him, forced proximity. It's just really great. Now, also another added element to this book was that Dante has a sleepwalking disorder where he will try to have sex with whomever, whatever, object, whatever is in his vicinity. And so he is kind of trying to warn Frankie, like, you need to lock the door at night. Don't unlock it, okay? So this was just very good. It was very twisted and unhinged, but if you are looking for something with those vibes, this was a very interesting read. And then I picked up 2 Weeks Notice by Whitney G. Now, I was specifically looking for a office boss, assistant, CEO type of romance, and I feel like really good ones are hard to find, but I really enjoyed this. I actually think this was my favorite read of the month, even though I was in such a historical romance binge. This one just, it made the top spot. So this book is going to follow Preston and Tara, and Preston is described as like this monster type of CEO. He fires everybody quits, just there's no pleasing this man whatsoever, and so he is on the hunt for a new assistant. And then we have Tara, and Tara is dirt poor at the very beginning of the book, and she is so dirt poor that she steals food from hotels day to day to feed herself. And so at the beginning of the book, she is actually on her way to a job interview, and so she happens to stop in one of Preston's hotels to steal food. She gets caught and security realizes that she's been here for quite a while. Preston comes, he sees her, and he starts talking to her and decides to give her an opportunity to become his assistant. And so then you're going to have several time jumps, and you eventually end up jumping several years in the future, and Tara has basically become his superstar assistant. Like, she gets everything done. They bicker, they banter, but she knows what he likes and how he likes it. So then, obviously, Tara still hates this man, okay? He's not kind at all. And so, eventually, she's going to want to quit. But Preston is not going to let her quit. So, there are clauses in her contract, and he is going to show her exactly why she can't quit. Like I said, he has been looking for an assistant. Like, nothing pleases this man. And then he finds Tara, and he's not going to let Tara go. But Tara wants to be let go. She wants to leave so badly, but it's a cat and mouse game. It's a push and pull. It's a chase. Like I said, he is not letting her go. And I really, really enjoyed it. And to kind of fuel that office boss assistant need, I read A Deal with the Devil. Now, here's the thing. I tried this book years ago when it was first published, or at least when the second book was published, and I ended up DNFing like around 20-30%. But I am a very firm believer in the motto, right book, wrong time, and it's actually why I don't really track my DNFs, because majority of my DNFs, I like to refer to them as a soft DNF. Like, I'm not feeling this, but I will try to come back to you in the future. And you know what? I am really glad I did, because I absolutely flew through this book. I loved it so, so much. So this story is going to follow Tally and Hayes. And at the very beginning of the story, Hayes's personal assistant is Hallie's best friend, and he and his husband need to go overseas because they are adopting a child. And so he basically enlists Hallie to take over as Hayes' assistant for like the next couple months. Now, Hayes does not like Tally. They don't have a very good relationship. Tally is a bartender, and so to her, Hayes has just kind of always looked down on her. And so when he realizes that Jonathan, her friend, enlisted her to be his assistant, he's not the most thrilled about it. Now, he is a plastic surgeon, like this extremely popular plastic surgeon, and so everybody wants to come to him. He's also a huge man whore, and so he constantly has women in his house every night, and he basically has Tally escort them out the door every morning, take them to breakfast, whatever, send them flowers, make sure they are taken care of. And so they have this banter. It turns into a lot more, but you will see Tally slowly trying to take care of Hayes because he's not taking care of himself. And it's just, I'm telling you, it's a lot more to the story than him just being a giant man whore, okay? Like I said, I DNF'd this book years ago, but I gave it another chance, and I'm so glad that I did. And then I listened to the audiobook of Wild and Wrangled by Lyla Sage. This is the last book in the Blue Rebel Ranch series, and I really did enjoy this. I still think out of all 4 books, the third one is my favorite, but I really liked this. So this book is going to follow Camille and Dusty, and this is basically a second chance romance. They were high school sweethearts. They were so in love, and then, just due to being young and not being able to make things work at that time, they separated and they just were never able to find their way back to each other. So then you get to modern day, and Camille is a single mother. So the mother of Gus, the male main character from the third book, their daughter Riley, she's the mom. And they co-parent really well. Their daughter was a one-night stand, and they're really good friends. And so Camille is basically integrated into the family. They all take care of her. And when the book starts, she is supposed to marry someone else, and she gets left at the altar, and she's just really humiliated and embarrassed. And Dusty is the one to kind of bring her back down and take care of her. So Camille was raised very wealthy, and so her and her parents don't get along because they had basically set this wedding up. This was a family friend. They all had kind of agreed this was a great thing to do for business mergers and stuff like that. And so obviously they are not happy when this wedding does not happen. They're not supportive of her. They are not doting grandparents or anything like that. And so Camille just kind of takes this as her opportunity to really just start over for good. And so her and Dusty throughout this story are just trying to find their way back to each other and rekindle that old love. But Dusty has been good friends with all of these guys for a really long time. Like I said, they all went to high school together. But this was a great audiobook. All of these are on Spotify, by the way. So yeah, but like I said, my favorite in the series is definitely the third one, but I really did enjoy this one as well. And then to wrap up April, I basically just read a really smutty palette cleanser, just nothing serious. That was the other half by Annelise Deveroux. And like I said, this was just super unhinged and smutty. So this is going to follow an NFL player, Nate, and Whitney. And at the beginning of the story, Nate meets Whitney at a party. She is new to town. She is a kindergarten teacher. And he basically becomes obsessed with her night 1. And so this kind of has like a very similar type of story to like the Pucking Wrong series by C.R. Jane, where he just becomes so enthralled with her at first sight and tries to do things within her life to get her to be solely in his life. Now, I didn't like Nate, okay? He was a huge red flag, and normally red flags are fun to read in books, but this was not a fun red flag, okay? He was just an aggravating red flag. He was just so beyond overbearing, and this is one of those few times in a romance book where I actually wanted her to get away from him. Anyways, it was unhinged. It was still fun, but I was rooting for her to end up single, okay? Anyways. Alright, so that will do it for these 16 books that I read in April. Like I said, I had such a fun time reading historical romances. I am prioritizing them a lot more. Also, in terms of Deal with the Devil, I am going to go back and try to reread a bunch of books that I had DNF'd in years past, just because I'm ready to give things a chance again. You know, new year, new things, new Ashley. Anyways, don't forget to hit like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.